let's see.
Greetings. My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
Oh, I love these guys. I love these guys. Yeah, the Mimic one is a long one. How long is it? 24 minutes? All right. With the way that I react to videos, this is about an hour's worth, 2 hours worth of content. So thank you, Descrom. These guys are great. Hold on. We got to subscribe to these guys. I think I'm already subscribed to these guys. Let me see. This is on my personal YouTube account. Yeah, I'm already subscribed to these guys. These guys... I love Asmongold. These guys are great. There was a period. So before I started streaming D&D, I felt like I was a bad DM. And so I started watching these guys, and these guys have a lot of good tips and a lot of good ideas that they go about things that I feel like helped reaffirm me as a DM, but also gave me new ideas. These guys are the reason how I got my critical homebrew. And they're the reasons why you guys are not allowed to drink potions as a bonus action. I know everyone else uses potions as a bonus action, but I like using it as an action.
We are the Dungeon Dudes.
Welcome to our channel where we cover everything D&D.
Oh my gosh, I haven't watched them in a while.
Guides for Dungeon Masters.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Amongst the many rules of adventuring in D&D is never trust a treasure chest in the dungeon. For who knows if when you lay your hand...
I have something to admit. I've never used a mimic before. Okay, I lied. I've used it once. I've used a mimic only once in my life. And I've always wanted to use it more,
suddenly
but
transforms into a
never really found an
sticky,
opportunity.
gooey creature, and a mouth erupts out of it as it opens up and devours whoever would try to seize the treasure within. That's the Mimic, one of the most loved and despised monsters in the world of Dungeons and Dragons.
To me,
mimics are creatures that can adapt their form into standard objects. So no matter where you are adventuring, you're never safe from a mimic.
Mimics are most notably look like chest, like treasure chests, but I've been seeing a lot on Twitter and all these things where like they have like a mimic house, or the whole dungeon's a mimic, where it's like mimic chairs, mimic cups, mimic plates, mimic knives. Or they did this one thing where it's like the throne is a mimic and the king is sitting on the throne, and like there's just like so many different mimic ideas people have put on the internet.
Who open up with horrible mouths.
They walk through those exact items, do they?
Mundane object that you find anywhere in a dungeon. So you can never trust your doors, your windows, your chairs, your rugs. There's no limit to what a mimic might be and the ways that they might surprise and devour you.
Mimics are often used as a fire-and-forget trap type monster. Something to annoy or surprise the player characters, but not necessarily something that we think of with the same detail that we might say a dragon or even a goblin. But that's missing so much of the potential of what mimics can offer when we want to use them in our stories and also use them in a more nuanced way.
I love how he says use them in our stories.
So today we're going to look at what mimics do, how to use them in our games, how to get more out of them, and how to even build adventures around mimics.
Sure.
There's a lot to discuss.
We'll see what these guys have to say.
I have
a lot more experience.
Challenge rating 2 monster that is most notable for its ability to pose as any object.
Okay.
When we actually get into how we might play a mimic at the table, we want to think about more than just making it a random trap. Your adventure party goes to open up the treasure chest, and oh no, it's a mimic, which still might surprise them, but a lot of adventurers now see this coming.
Not mine. I never use them.
Super paranoid.
I would
there are so
F
many
somebody
things
up with
in D&D that look like one thing and transform into something that tries to eat you. So it's not uncommon to see adventurers carrying around things like 10-foot poles or sacrificial minions.
What? Is that a thing? People do that? Man, I've been too nice to my freaking players. Hold up. What? Y'all been mean out there. Y'all DMs been mean. I've been to my players. I literally, oh my gosh, my players literally just got like, when I say about a million gold's worth of magic items, I'm not even kidding. They're in a city and they went to all the richest places in the city, and they just stole all the magic items that they could carry. They just stole all the magic items they could carry. And there was not much. I tried. I swear I tried. I had guards. I had things, but they have investigation checks. Imagine playing with a character that has a passive investigation check of 24. Okay. And like, here's the thing. I don't mind giving out a lot of magic items because they can't use all of them. And 2, it's good for them to sell stuff. And 3, well, it's high risk, high reward. You know what I mean? Oh my God, LO. Yeah. It is crazy. It is crazy. They got a lot.
Or otherwise to have them do the poking.
I should have thrown some mimics in there, but it wouldn't make sense where they were to have mimics in there. I just don't know when or when I mean, I don't know. We'll see.
And the prodding to make sure that the characters aren't the ones getting eaten by the treasure chest. And so we're going to talk about the ways that you can still surprise your players by having mimics posed as objects that they might not be expecting.
Okay.
But it's worth thinking about the how and the why and the what of
I like that.
Because so often a mimic is one of those creatures that is often used as part of a trap in a dungeon, and oftentimes we don't put necessarily the thought that we should into why this creature is here, how it got there, and what it's doing. A mimic is not a particularly intelligent monster, so it is a predator that wants to devour and eat its prey. And if we look to the real world, there are real world examples of predators
the best way.
Use this type of tactic. One of my favorite examples is
life.
The spider-tailed horned viper. As you might assume from the snake's name, the snake's tail from a distance kind of looks like a spider. And the snake is known for hiding under a rock but exposing just its tail. It wiggles its tail a little, and a bird sees what they think is a tasty bug to eat. The bird swoops down, and it ends up as dinner instead because the snake pops out and devours it.
Why would you want to eat a spider?
Like me and you love watching animal documentaries and nature shows, then you have seen this countless times. There are so many animals in nature that
National Geographic's on
towards
Disney Plus.
them as by mimicking themselves as something else. I think that one of the most terrifying
those animal shows are so depressing. Like, I'm not one to care about cute and cuddly things. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I feel like I'm a heartless monster because of that. But like, I was watching this one documentary, and I had to just shut it off. I couldn't even finish it. Like, they were like these walruses. I can't remember, and they had to go up this like steep hill. And it was so steep that they would like fall and tumble and just die. And it was like they're just dying for like nearly nothing. And that was it. It was like after all the other depressing stuff, like I was like, man, animals really got to fight to live, man. And it's just, oh, jeez. Like that was it. I couldn't take it anymore.
Creatures of the sea is the anglerfish, which has that light bulb attached to its head, which it uses to lure little fish towards it. Oh, what's this light? Yeah. Well, you're about to get devoured by the scariest looking fish ever seen. Mm-hmm. So I think that we can look to these nature shows and documentaries to really think about what it means to be a predator who can hide in plain sight, lure its prey towards it, and then strike at the right moment. Mimics aren't generally just sitting around doing nothing. There's an intention behind why they are where they are and what they've chosen to pose as.
Okay.
So when you're thinking about your mimic, think about the environment that they're in and what it is that they might be hunting.
I think this is a good rule of thumb, not just for mimics, but for everything that you do. A good foundation to have for people is like, why don't just start slapping things in areas. That's what kind of bothers me when I'm reading these like manuals and stuff like that. Sometimes they just like slap a character somewhere and I'm like, why is that character there? But they don't tell you why they're there. There's no it's just like that character's there. And so just having a decent understanding of your world is probably like the best way to enrich it is the way I could say it, because some people like to know, other people's don't care, but it's a good peace of mind, and you'll be surprised how much it helps flow the story, but not just flow the story, but also helps makes yeah, that's the best way to put it. We'll just say that.
Are they hunting people? Well, now a chair or a door or a treasure chest is the perfect thing to mimic as. But maybe there's other creatures in the environment that there are more likely to be attracted towards a different type of object. So depending on the environment, your mimic might take a very different form as it's hunting the prey around it.
Okay.
Another important takeaway from this idea of mimics as predators is that predators go where the food is.
True.
So a mimic in a long-lost dungeon
doesn't make sense.
Never been opened in forever is either going to be starved and crazy and maybe dead, or maybe mimics are going to gravitate towards places where there are more people.
Yeah.
Mimics in a
That's what I
city
agree.
or an urban environment could be a terrifying urban scourge, masquerading in alleyways as maybe a garbage can, or a discarded bottle, or perhaps even just a bag of coins that someone thinks, oh, I'll pick this up off the street. And then all of a sudden, they are devoured by a mimic. So I actually think that unlike being a dungeon predator, maybe a mimic makes sense as in a mega dungeon.
I agree. I agree. I like, okay, this is a very important part that they're bringing up that I think like a lot of people don't take into account, because you'll go and you'll look for things to fight, right? Like, let's say you're setting up an encounter, and you go and you check under certain biomes. There's a lot of things that the game determines, hey, this biome, you get to fight this, but you don't get to fight that. I think it's silly to just purposely leave certain things out. There's definitely a place for everything, and I also think there's certain creatures or monsters can fit in multiple places. So don't be afraid to look up. If you're short of ideas, I think looking up under biomes is good, but also look under creature types. Look under certain things. It's okay to have a water elemental in like the desert. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to have something that may not always be there. And I think having mimics outside of the dungeon makes sense, and it fits, right? You don't have your giant sandworms don't always have to be in the desert. I don't know why the desert is like my main point of topic right now. Probably because of where the next episode of Project Odyssey is going to take place. Spoilers, but yeah, that's this is a good thing to keep in mind, not just for mimics, but for other creatures as well, because you can do a lot. You could do a lot with creatures.
I think that mimics could be a really interesting urban scourge in this respect.
I think that mimics get much scarier when you actually put them in environments that are well populated.
Yeah.
You suddenly have an entire murder mystery opening up of like, why are people going missing?
Ooh.
Nobody can find any trace of them, and there's no murder weapon. Who's the killer? Well, it's the random objects around the alleyways that are actually killing people. So when we start to think of mimics as more than just a trap, and as really smart predators. Again, they're not the most intelligent creatures.
No.
But no matter how limited the intelligence of a creature is, remember that all animals
What's the intelligence
in the wild
of a mimic?
know
Can
how
one of
to
you guys
hunt,
tell me? What's the intelligence of a mimic?
And know how to generally stay safe from their predators. Mimics are no different, and they're actually really, really good at this.
Like any predator, mimics might be nocturnal, and they might lie dormant all day and only strike at night. Perhaps a mimic is posing as a mug in a tavern and uses its adherence ability to fall into the backpack of a tavern
5
after
Damn,
last call
stupid.
and go home with them. Perhaps one mimic inhabits a city library and waits until someone takes it home as a book. Perhaps another mimic likes to live.
You guys ever seen Harry Potter? You know that Harry Potter, I think, is like, was it The Prisoner of Azkaban? Where Hagrid gets to be a teacher and he issues that monster book to them. I've always imagined that book being a mimic. I've always like, man, that's a good mimic.
In marketplaces and fits itself in with any common items found in a marketplace until it's bought and waits.
The monster
to
book,
transform
it's
into
totally a
true
mimic.
form
Yeah, it is.
until it's
It really is.
Mimics are smart enough to do this kind of behavior. And in this, we get the seeds of some really cool adventures and some really cool scenarios where the player characters can solve.
So when a creature has below average intelligence, so like when I think of average intelligence, I like to think of myself as average intelligence. And if someone has above average intelligence, then like I like to think that they understand like they're a rocket scientist or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like that's, and then when someone has below average intelligence, they're not so much like stupid, but they don't really process things as well. So like for a mimic that has like a 5 intelligence, I think that it is smart enough, kind of what he's saying, to hide in certain places, like it's an animal, you know? Like it's more animalistic than anything else. It's smart enough to get food, not smart enough to realize this prey will it. Yes, exactly. Yes, smart enough to get food, but maybe they won't have tactics, right? Maybe once it decides to pounce on someone, it's not going to act like goblins, or it's not going to have like pack tactics or be like wolves and do certain things. It might just act like a Dark Souls mimic, where it's just constantly coming at you and it's just trying to eat you and devour you, and it wants to get the first jump on you and everything.
Why are these bizarre murders happening? Now, of course, we could also always justify a mimic as the creation of a mad wizard. Or perhaps
the one and only time I used a mimic was a witch. It was a witch. She had a mimic that she would feed people to, but it was also, she actually used the mimic as a place to store her magical items. And my friend Jocelyn went to go open the chest, and no, it wasn't Jocelyn. This was a completely different D&D group. This was 100% a different D&D group. And the mimic got a surprise attack and I think nearly killed them.
Some sort of far realm influence is warping the environment and causing objects to become mimics.
I like that.
But once we start thinking about these things, we can see much more creative applications for where mimics might appear.
Another really interesting question that you can ask yourself is, what does a mimic actually look like? Again, we could go the route of it being an infection that attaches itself to mundane objects and turns them into living creatures. But if that's not the way we're going, and there is
it's true. What's your
mimic
foundation?
creature that
Stay consistent.
changes itself into other forms, does it have a natural form? It's a really interesting question, and I do think that we can
think about that stuff
even
too.
like movies like The Thing,
Yeah.
or like those sort of Cronenberg type monsters.
I imagine a mimic's natural
Totally
form
think
kind
about
of
this.
being like the symbiote of Venom.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an amorphous blob of just
That's such a
plasma,
cool way of thinking
or
about
like
it.
material matter in an amorphous sort of shape, and that when it
That just gave me an
takes
amazing idea.
on its form to devour someone, or because like when you see mimics,
You guys ever seen Full Metal Alchemist? You know, like the alchemy stone, or whatever it's called, the philosopher's stone, the sorcerer's stone, whatever, the philosopher's stone in Full Metal Alchemist. Imagine if mimics were just like failed philosopher's stones, and they just needed to keep devouring souls in order to continue their life.
in the art of 5th edition, they often have these very specific types of teeth.
Look
and
at
these
that.
very specific types of eyes that they manifest. And there's kind of like this purple sinew that is bursting out from within.
I
whatever
love
the
that.
object is.
I love that look.
So I do like this idea that like that is the telltale sign of a mimic, that there is some sort of underlying creature, but it, like a chameleon almost, it always takes in part of the form that it last took. One of the things that I also think of is the T-1000 from the Terminator.
The T-1000.
And when it was towards the end of Terminator 2, when it's damaged, whatever object it grabs onto, it does that chameleon thing where it kind of becomes the steel girders, or it becomes the pipe.
Yeah.
And that's just how the mimic operates.
I think that when we move into the combat tactics for a mimic, we are going to go a little traditional at first here, but now
I don't
that
think
we
they should
have
be
this
too
roleplay
smart.
inspiration, we can really drive home the fact that the mimic is a predator that waits and lunges and surprises their foes when they're least expecting.
Yep.
So depending on
I
the
think a
object
mimic
you've
should-
chosen for your
you
mimic,
should try
the
your
mimic is gonna
best
place
to get-
itself in an environment.
You should try your best to allow your mimic to get surprise. I think that's the best thing about it. Like, I think the mimic, because especially when your players get really strong and overpowered, I think the best thing for your mimic is to really attempt to give it surprise and really try to just take out one player. It should be like a moment where your player's like, what just happened? You know, and that,
environment in a location that it wants to be approached and touched. Oftentimes,
Yes.
it's not going to hide itself under blankets in the corner of the room where nobody's going to find it. It's probably going to be the chair in the middle of the room, the head seat at a dining table,
Yep.
or the bowl of delicious food set out at the table, or possibly the rug that when you first walk in, you're going to step on it. It wants
Gross.
to lure prey to it.
Gross.
It's going to wait for the opportune moment, and you always get to do that wonderful thing that mimics do, where they actually are a very sticky creature.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yeah,
the
I
first
forgot about
time
that.
a player realizes what they're in for is when they've grabbed an object, stepped somewhere they shouldn't, touched something, and it gets stuck to them.
Now, because mimics are predators, one thing that we could think about is a lot of times predators will stay and hide if they're outnumbered. So a mimic might wait for that opportunity to strike when it can catch its prey alone, or it can catch wounded prey, or prey that are vulnerable in some other way.
notice how they're talking about tactics outside of like combat. They might go into combat later, but notice how like their tactics are about how sneaky can you be with this creature and when can you pounce. This is very, very important when it comes to being a DM, because it's okay to go hard on your players. It's okay to go all in on your players. But what's really important to know as a DM is that certain creatures are going to act differently. So if you go in every fight and your fights are the same every single time, I think that you're doing a disservice to your players. I think you're doing a disservice to the fun factor of the game. Get into the mindset of those creatures and do your best to have every fight. Now, not every fight has to be unique. A lot of creatures are going to fight the same, but do your best to get into the mindset of that player, those creatures, and remember to fight. Don't just walk up and swing at things, right? Some creatures know that they're weaker and they'll probably try to sneak up. Other creatures probably think that they're stronger and they'll probably boast about it a lot. Some creatures will probably lure your players into ambushes. Just think about the tactics and think about how did these creatures survive up until this point? Because we all know the characters are going to absolutely delete them. And it's really important and really cool, and it creates for different scenarios. I don't know if you guys have ever seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but what's really cool about like JoJo's is that, you know, a lot of times the main party is going up against like one villain, but that one villain uses their best attribute to get the jump on the party and to take advantage of the party to the best of their abilities. Whereas like, and you should do the same thing. Even if your creatures are weaker, even if you know you're going to lose the fight as a DM, you want to do your best. You want to bring out the best of that creature as soon as possible to hinder your players as much as possible.
One way to do great misdirection with a Mimic, because if the Mimic doesn't attack the first one that touches it, if it waits for the good opportunity, then it can be much more effective. If it allows itself to be picked up as
I made a human mercenary run away when the fight was lost. Players were so disappointed.
And then they bring it back into their encampment.
Players are murder hungry, man. Players love to kill things. But I'm proud of you for making it run away when the fight was lost. A lot of people don't do that. Just because your players will fight to the death does not mean that your NPC should fight to the death.
And then that night, it strikes. That's something way scarier than if it just popped out right away and latched onto one party member, but then got destroyed by the others.
You know, it'd be really cool if the mimic followed the players. If the mimic followed the players back to their camp or something like that, and waited till everyone was asleep. What if the mimic was a magic item, and then you picked it up, and it waited till you guys were at camp or you guys were resting, and then you went to attune to the item. And as you were attuning to the item, the mimic lurched out and attacked you. There's a reason the phrase "murder hobos" is always so apt. Yeah, players love
By a
murdering.
similar token, maybe mimics
Murder time,
aren't
fun
solo
time.
hunters. Maybe mimics are pack hunters.
Yo,
I think that's a really cool
pack
concept.
hunters.
And oftentimes we found that mimics get used as solo creatures. But I think having the dining room table where all the chairs are mimics is much scarier. And it waits for the players to all sit down to enjoy the lovely feast.
That is very scary.
Then the chairs attack.
Oh, no.
In this respect, the various different objects could all be mimics. Perhaps maybe even the mimics all work together, and only the chair at the head of the table is a mimic, but so is the plate, so is the fork, so is the knife, so is the goblet. And whoever sits at the head of the table gets attacked by 5 mimics.
Oh,
we could imagine mimics even taking smaller or larger forms.
Oh, that boy's gonna be having that boy's dead.
In D5e, such as spinning
getting attacked
mimics,
by 5 mimics. You're dead.
Juvenile mimics, giant mimics. That let us have mimics of varying sizes. A mimic could be as small as a single coin, or it could be as large as an entire house. Now, we could also imagine that maybe mimics work with other creatures.
What happens if you
cases?
How does that even work?
Have tamed predators like wolves to be dogs. What if doppelgangers kept tamed mimics as their hunting companions? Or what if an oblex teamed up with a group of mimics?
And so an oblex with a mimic? Yo. Holy shish kebab. That was just oblexes are fucking insane, dude. An oblex with a mimic, guys. Think about that for a second. The I don't know, I feel like mimics, not mimics. What did he say before? Shifters or whatever get bad rep. But an oblex, I feel like an oblex would totally team up with a mimic. If not on purpose, by oh jeez. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I know what I'm doing for Halloween now. I know what I'm doing for the month of October.
Impersonate people, or the mimics impersonate objects.
That's so
You can have an entire dungeon of just things posing as other things by using the right creatures.
Well, that's where you get into the far realm corruption of what if the dungeon itself is a creature and the mimics are its children? And I think that when we add more creatures into the combat, there's this opportunity that in a combat encounter where the players are interacting with the environment, for example, in a combat where there's doors separating different rooms, or a combat where there's levers that need to be pulled, or a puzzle the players get to solve, some of the elements could be mimics.
Yeah.
And then the players risk, hey, you're in the middle of a fight with another monster, but then the mimic could join in at the same time. And this works either when the mimics are actively working with the monsters or as an opportunist, because it might be that a mimic simply is an opportunist in a larger dungeon and just hides and waits for the straggler, right?
I'm also thinking it might be brilliant that a mimic wants to split the party. So a mimic posing as a door lets the first person open the door, walk through, and it closes. The next person grabs the doorknob, and then the door tries to eat them. Now you're kind of splitting the party. There's a lot of really fun tactics that a mimic could wait.
It's a good one
for other creatures to start attacking.
Get creative with it.
Depending on where you pose them or where you put them, there's so many options for creative ways to use mimics.
Now, normal mimics don't speak, but it is suggested in the monster manual that maybe they could talk or have some form of telepathy. That would give them another way of luring people in.
Hive mind.
Hive
mind.
When the mimic also poses as a magic item, that's when you get something really weird. And like if the mimic is
that's what I said.
telepathic or can talk, and it takes the form of a sword, and it claims to be a magic sword.
That's what I said.
That's just like shining the spider even more brightly for the bird.
Ew,
I think
don't
that
bring up the
there's
spider
a
again.
lot of fun you can have with telepathy. Voices in your players' heads that are saying like, going back to the dining room table. I've prepared this lovely feast for you. Please sit down. And you're like, who's saying that? And if they decide to sit down, oops. But I think that also if we are giving a mimic telepathy,
they're really on this like dining room table
magic
thing.
Sword. I think what's really cool is if you give the mimic maybe a spell or a spell casting trait or an ability to use a spell-like ability.
Or some
fireball.
Sort of spell mimicry ability itself,
Yeah, like if it's posing as a flame tongue, maybe this mimic does fire damage additionally when it attacks.
That'd be cool. I like how creative this is.
There's different ways that we could imagine implementing higher level mimics by giving it spell mimicry or the ability to pose as a magic item and adapt those powers.
I like that a
into
lot.
itself.
You know, the other fun thing is I like to also think of creatures from nature like crabs that pick up a shell, and so in this respect you could have a mimic that is one part of a two-part object. So what if the mimic isn't the bottle but the cork?
Gross.
And so most people handle the bottle by the bottle itself, and it's not until you go to open the bottle that you actually touch the cork.
It might be tempting to have your mimic turn into a person. Although I think that's a compelling idea that we probably could use, I do think that there's other creatures.
I don't think they're smart enough to be
like
a person.
Or the obelix that really lend themselves to that avenue. So I think sharing the environment with other mimicking creatures is a better fit than having a mimic.
Share the love. Share the love of terror.
Throw into our dungeon of mimicry many other animated objects or creatures that pose as other things.
What else?
I think, for example, and rugs of smothering, animated armor. There's animated weapons. You even have ropers, which pose as rocks. You have gargoyles that pose as statues. Golems.
You can have
idea.
You can have a poser dungeon.
An entire environment with just these.
Make them absolutely paranoid.
Everything is trying to kill the party.
I think your players are going to hate you if you do this. You're going to have a ball as a DM, but I think your players are going to hate you after this.
It's a great way to make
what's great
a horror
about this dungeon, though, is at the beginning,
good Halloween
you're just
idea.
going to be like, oh my god, the rug's killing me. The armor's
I know what I'm
killing
doing
me,
for Halloween,
the
guys.
chair is killing me. The person who was the friendly barkeep is killing me. By the end of the adventure, they're walking into every room, poking the door, poking the they're like, oh my god, oh my god.
You know what?
It
Okay,
will
so
instill
this is
paranoia.
when you make a dungeon like that. There's a lot of integrity that has to go into making a dungeon like that, because you know it. If you've been a DM, you know it. That temptation where a player's figured something out and they go to poke it with the stick, and you're like, oh, they're poking the thing. They figured it out. Either it was by complete luck, or maybe you gave away one too many clues. Either way, you know you've had that temptation of just being like, well, I could just move it over here instead. It was here. I can move it here. I think if you ever have those temptations, fight them. There is something beautiful. There's something really beautiful about players figuring out something. Let the players have the win. They feel so good about it They might do a little bit of trash talking, and they might do a little bit of that, but don't change it. Don't get butthurt about it. I've definitely had that temptation a lot, and a dungeon like this that they're describing is a perfect opportunity. You have to have a lot of integrity as a DM, right? And if you might just be like, you know what, screw them, F them. But it could lead to a bad time with the players. Give them like a couple successes, you know? Sometimes I change it. Sometimes I do the opposite. Moving the mimic around could fall under railroading, in my opinion. Yeah, 100%. You're making the story go the way you want it to go, despite players' contribution to it. 100%. I agree. Sometimes I railroad in the opposite fashion. So like what I'll do is I'll have them poke the mimic. The mimic wasn't there. Like they're just not getting the point. This is I've only ever used one mimic before, so this is a metaphorical made up solution. But if the players are just not understanding what's happening and they're too scared to do their ideas, they're too anxious, or they just don't get it, they're dumbfounded. You know, it's a game of telephone. They're not always going to understand what's happening, and you have all the answers, and they may not. Sometimes when they go to poke something with a stick, I just change it. I'm just like, yeah, you actually need to do this, but this is what I don't tell them that. I give them a freebie, but only when they're struggling too much and I need to get the game going. Like the game's got to go. The game's got to go. I told Allie, you guys know Allie over Allison. I told Allie during Project Odyssey, I was like, thank you for solving that mystery. Because I was really worried, because last episode of Project Odyssey was a mystery episode. I was really worried that nobody was going to solve it. And so I told her, I was like, hey, oh my gosh, thank you for solving that mystery. Thank you for actually doing that. And she was like, yeah, of course. I loved it. So that was great.
Into your players. And it sounds really fun.
So in terms of adventure ideas, I think we've already touched on a few, but I think that the first one of the two that we could really expand into a full concept is the mimics as the serial killer.
I love that. I love that idea that the mimic
infesting an urban environment.
Yeah, that's probably like my favorite idea that they've said throughout this whole episode.
It's a mimic, and maybe the mimics have like a
because people won't expect it. Players won't expect it.
They're working together or something, or like a super mimic or something like that.
Super mimic. How many mimics are there?
It
turns you look into how many mimics there are.
This is being caused by mimics, and maybe you could even have a villain behind it. Like maybe there actually is a doppelganger who has trained the mimics and is helping plant the mimics.
Really on this doppelganger
to
idea.
Attack their victims. This is like a super magic high fantasy like detective story, and I do a lot of super magic high fantasy stuff.
Another really awesome idea that we could do is we've talked about. You mentioned the dungeon is alive and the mimic is its children. But I also think if we stretch that even further and we actually combine that with the urban environment. What if there's just a house that appears on a street in a town and nobody saw this house before? The house is a mimic. The objects inside are mimics. It is filled with people, an obelix. Yep. And it just appears
I like the obelix idea.
And people who are passing by see like the new inn that just sprung out of nowhere. And there's a person in the front being like, come on in. It's really cheap to stay here. First night's free. Lures people in, and then everything inside of this magic house eats up the people that are staying there, and then the house disappears overnight and moves to a new location.
I like to imagine too that the house waits until midnight.
It's like Monster House.
Until the rowdy crew is there. Everyone's having fun. Everything seems great. All the people seem nice.
And then it pounces on you.
Of course, the next time it appears, it uses the people it devoured.
Oh, yeah, as the obelisk.
For the next time.
I also think this mimic house might even wait like a week without eating. Because it appears in a town, and the townsfolk are like, where did this house come from? Somebody goes to check it out. That's just a regular house. The next time they go, there's a person there. Yeah, I work here. This is my inn. And although it seems really curious...
Morning. Hey, good morning.
There's nothing bad happens. And they build that rapport with the town.
Yes.
Until it fills with people. And then it attacks and vanishes.
Oof. What if this inn follows the adventurers?
Hey, that's my idea.
It knows that it follows behind the adventurers.
Yeah.
So it never goes after adventurers. but it knows that adventurers tend to attract an interesting crowd because they tell stories. So again, it's like one of those parasitic predators that it's like the curious inn, the curious house, it never eats the adventurers, but it sets itself up wherever adventurers go.
I did this really ambitious thing. Unfortunately, the player ended up leaving, which was kind of sad. But so I never got to play it out. I did this really ambitious thing where the player had an alternate personality, and he didn't know it, and neither did anyone else. And they would randomly get attacked. And they had their ideas. They had their suspicions, and they never knew. It got to the point where they thought someone was following them and attacking them. And the thing is, I would always use his spells. I would always use his strongest spells. I would always use his other things that are going on. And I would always, like, get really close to killing someone. And nobody ever figured it out. And we were so close. He ended up, he's a streamer now, but he ended up streaming, and he couldn't have time for D&D anymore, which is fair, dude, I barely have time for D&D as a streamer. So that's oof. I wish I would have seen that through. I always need time for D&D.
Come to the tavern to like get help from the adventurers or something. Yeah.
There's a lot of fun with the mimic.
True. Always need time for D&D. That's a fact.
Mimic house idea. I think that even if we're thinking much smaller scale, not really an adventure idea, but just like the encounter idea.
Yeah.
I think that what's great is if the players are looking for something, the MacGuffin, or they need to like press a switch or flip a switch. But when they finally enter the room where the switch is or where the MacGuffin is, there's like 8 of them.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, what do I do? And I just love that setup. I even, I don't tell my players this. I hope none of my players are watching this video.
They're not.
I'm thinking of using this
My
idea
players don't
where
care
the
about my
player
content
characters
either.
are tracking down a dead body. It's somebody died out on an adventure, and their family wants them to bring the body back. When they find the body, they find 2 of it. It's like an exact replica of the same body.
Yeah.
One of them's a mimic. One of them's the actual body. And
Gross.
the mimic's just like, I'm going to pose as this dead body who has like a bag of treasure on him and like a magic sword, and is just hoping that the adventurers touch him and not the...
I'm here.
That's an interesting thing too, is like, what does a mimic actually eat?
Well, I guess you're going to have to
Because
die first
maybe
then.
a mimic, it poses as the treasure by a dead body. And so its last victim, it like eats part of the victim and then is just replaces one of the objects on the victim's body and waits for its next prey.
Yeah, I like
I
that.
think that mimics are super fun, and we can be
shit.
so much more creative than just using the mimic as a basic trap monster.
I agree. I like this.
I think that if we think about the way that it hunts, what its goals are, and what its prey is, and think of ways that we can implement adventures and new tactics to really bring mimics to life, I think that we can have so much more fun with this iconic D&D monster.
Yeah.
So this has been a look at mimics.
I'm definitely going to use more mimics now.
If you've
I've only ever used mimic
in
once
your
before.
campaigns, tell us about it in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible support of our Patreon community.
Yeah.
If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube and want to hop on and chat with us on our patron-only Discord server, follow the links in the description below to get set up.
And make
Glad
sure to
you
check
liked
out
it.
our live
I
play, The
did like
Fate
it.
of Drakenheim, which airs Tuesday evenings on Twitch. You can
There you
find
go.
all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we've got plenty more guides for Dungeon Masters on running monsters in D&D 5e right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time
In the dungeon.
Dungeon Dudes. There you go. There you have it. There you have it. Oops. I did not mean to do that. No. Go back. Okay, hold on. Whoops. Let's just go back over here.
Greetings. My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm...
Okay. So, here's the video. If you guys... I enjoyed that. This is not really the first time I've reacted to content, but first time I've reacted to D&D content. Yeah, if you guys have more stuff you want me to watch, send it my way. I'll definitely look into it. And I want to do that stuff. Let's see what they say in the comment section. But there they are. Go give them a follow, subscribe. These guys know what they're talking about. They're really good about their stuff. Let's see. First of all, wonderful intro. Mimics are always going to be my favorite creature ever since the Dark Souls, of course. Yeah, Dark Souls. Mimics in Dark Souls are absolutely terrifying. The first time I ran into a Dark Souls mimic, I screamed my happy little souls off. D8 may not be the strongest, but it always is a fun surprise to make people paranoid. I'm running in Ebron Games. Spent a lot of early levels in Sharn. The Boromars had a clockwork gamble machine. Woo! His story's making me yawn. Outside certain shops, mimics planted by the rival faction took that form. The players never picked up the hooks for that. Later, they got annoyed with the city corruption, mounted a campaign to have one of their friendly NPCs unseat a Boromar family leader from her council seat. Jeez, this guy wrote a book. Vending machines descend into hell. Anyways, poked up ended up being a mating pair of slot machines. The potions were tiny mimics and stat blocks. I enjoyed the look on their face when they started fighting the top side. Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it. I'm absolutely adding Mysterious Mimic Taverns to my games. Mysterious Mimic Taverns is not the worst idea. Is not the worst idea. Okay, we had. Let me check one other thing. We had. I think you guys also sent me one other thing you wanted me to react to. I'd love to look at. There are more mimic variants than I thought there were. Were they? Let's look at those real quick. So, I didn't know. I thought there was just like a mimic. I'm assuming a mimic's a monstrosity. Jim Dark Magic? What? Horde Mimic? Juvenile Mimic? Hold up. A Horde Mimic is a challenge rating of 8. Juvenile Mimic? False Appearance. Spider Climb. Bite. Shapeshift. Okay, pretty standard. What's a Horde Mimic? What? It's a freaking Sarlacc pit. Oh my gosh. Looks like it mostly changed his size. Hey man, the bigger the monster, that is a huge creature. Quite literally, yeah, it's a huge monstrosity. Oh my gosh. False appearance, horde form only. We could change that. We can make it into a house or something. Multi-attack, bite, pseudopod. What the hell? Plus 8 to hit, 10 feet. Bludgeoning damage, mimic adheres to a target. A creature adheres to the mimic is also grappled. Okay. DC 16, that's pretty hard. Wait. They get... Wait, if they land their hit, they automatically get grappled? Mimic adheres to the target. A creature adheres to the mimic and is also grappled. Until the grapple ends, the target is restrained, and ability checks made to escape grapple have disadvantage. Holy shit, you just get auto-grappled. My god. My new goal is to befriend a juvenile mimic and use it as a sticky bomb in combat. I love your creativity. I love your freaking creativity. That's a fantastic idea. Caustic Mist. The mimic sprays a fine mist of acid in a 30-foot cone. Okay, it's like a dragon. Each creature in that area must make a DC 14 dexterity saving throw. On failed save, the creature takes 6d8 acid damage and is blinded until the end of its next turn. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much. Oh my gosh. Kin to the comic Mimic, describing the monster matter, horde mimics are among the oldest and most cunning of their kind. Oh, dude, look at their intelligence. It's a 10. It's a 10. Oh my gosh. This thing is deadly. This thing is deadly. With 120, with on average 123 hit points. Armor class is 14, so they're pretty easy to hit. Let's see what it's a challenge rating. It's 3,900 XP. 3,900 XP. That means this thing is meant for like level 10s. People that are level 10, 13s. Am I right about that? I'm going off the top of my head. Where's my... Let's see. 3,900 XP. That is... Yeah, level 11. Level 11, level 10 is considered deadly. Man, look at me. I was right on the money. Look at me. So if you put this... So basically, you could put this creature up against... You could put this creature up against a party of level 5s. If you have 4 people in a party of level 5s, it could probably kill one of them. I will now wait for a horde mimics to become a thing. Already reading my mind. I'm so mean to my players. Something like this, I would put, like, if I had 5 people in a party, I would have 5 horde mimics for them to fight. And they could take them on. My party is pretty good at combat. They're a little too good at combat. It kind of pisses me off. Sometimes I have to be really smart about... I say they're really good at combat, but I usually get about 2 or 3 of them close to death every time we have a big combat like that. So to be fair, I keep challenging them and they keep meeting the challenge. In all fairness.